If drummers are anti-solo, that's up to them. They're musicians, and they can play whatever they want. But my inspirations early on were people like Buddy Rich, seeing him on The Tonight Show, or Gene Krupa. One of the inspirations for my becoming a writer was the baseball board game Strat-O-Matic. My inspirations come from everywhere. It's important to look at everything and anything. I think what I create is serious fashion, but I don't want to keep my focus on that. You have to look at a lot of different things. I mean, people are always surprised when they find out that my favorite show is RuPaul's Drag Race. I have many musical inspirations, but I would really love to just be me, my very own artist. Wherever you look there are inspirations, books, literature, paintings, landscapes, everything. Just living is an inspiration. When people ask about inspirations, and you're like, oh, it was a flower or a mountain or a pony, some people just think you're insane. I'm worried to come across that way. My father, obviously, and my mother were inspirations. My uncle, Frank Harper, he was an absolute mentor for me. I am trying to persuade my family to spend more time in China. It's no fun to be in exile. I can't even figure out the basic 26 letters, let alone operate, in English. I often feel that although I found the sky of freedom above my head, I've lost the soil I stand on. I need to be back in my motherland, where I can find inspirations. My daughter is one of my greatest inspirations. She's an environmentalist, she plays piano. She's raising money for the earthquake victims in Nepal. Every day she surprises me and teaches me something. Post Malone is one of my biggest inspirations. I just love his songs and his writing. He's a genius. Then person-wise, I'm a huge fan of Zendaya. I love her. I watch her interviews and everything she does all the time because I think she's just such a crazy good human being. I am grateful I got the chance to meet Stevie Wonder. He's like royalty to me and is one of my biggest inspirations. Words outlive people, institutions, civilizations. Words spur images, associations, memories, inspirations and synapse pulsations. Words send off physical resonations of thought into the nethersphere. Words hurt, soothe, inspire, demean, demand, incite, pacify, teach, romance, pervert, unite, divide. Words be powerful. In terms of style I typically veer toward a certain masculinity. My style inspirations range from images of my father in his 1970s suits, to Tilda Swinton, to Hugh Hefner, to Sharon Stone and her ferocious sexuality, to handsome men I see on the streets of New York. Personal relationships are usually my biggest inspirations for writing my songs. The best way for me to write a song is to visualize the story in my head, and I start humming a melody, and before you know it, a song is born. Since Brooks Brothers is a 189-year-old company, there are plenty of references and inspirations I can draw from their archives and catalogs. The wearer of black fleece may not be all that different from mine, in that I imagine that it would be someone who is a true individual, an independent thinker. This is for both men and women. Indeed, we are privileged to have been afforded the opportunity to study nature and to follow our own thoughts and inspirations in a time of relative tranquility and in a land with a generous and forward-looking government. One of my greatest inspirations for stand-up was Jonathan Winters. He was a genius. One thing about him, and also Lenny Bruce, is that they were in the tradition of the one-man show. That's why Richard Pryor was so great, and George Carlin, too. They prowled the stage, they used voices, they were really talents. It wasn't until I was in my teens that I started admiring writers as inspirations for my own work, and my earliest influences there were Stephen King, Marion Zimmer Bradley and Richard Adams. My daughter is a huge motivation for me to be healthy, but I also have a lot of great inspirations in my life and people that I emulate, like my mother. Wintertime for me is a time when I do a lot of my writing in the studio. It's a time I enjoy, and it's very reflective and a very calming time of the year. Throughout the year I gather a lot of musical inspirations, and this is where I bring them to the studio and see what will evolve musically. Makeup is an extraordinary tool that allows me to share my inspirations, my fantasies, and my vision with the world. Growing up, my inspirations were Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, all these martial arts legends. I wanted to express my talent on screen in a certain way. I felt that it made me a little different. I like listening to old soul music. I like Sam Cooke. When I was growing up, the first things I was listening to was Whitney Houston and Cher. They were really big inspirations for me. I've always believed that there are funny people everywhere, but they're just not comedians. In fact, some of my best comedic inspirations were not professional entertainers. Most creative work is a process of people passing ideas and inspirations from the past into the future and adding their own creativity along the way. I want to have a record with Beyoncé or Lady Gaga. They are both my inspirations, especially Beyoncé. Tim Tebow is one of my biggest inspirations. I actually want to be able to do some of the things that he does in terms of the amount of charity work and the non-profit work, and the way he impacts people off the field. I think that is what is most inspiring to me about him. As far as songwriting, my inspirations came from love, life and death, and viewing other people's situations. Elton John and Billy Joel, I find them both to be huge inspirations. Those guys are so talented. I did XXX, State of the Union, with Ice Cube because he and Samuel L. Jackson are some of favorite inspirations in life. The longing to produce great inspirations didn't produce anything but more longing. The fact is that at different stages of your life, and under the influence of different inspirations, you write different things. The point is not necessarily to find your voice, which grinds out the same sort of thing again and again, but to find a vehicle for people who are far more important than the author, the characters. One of my biggest inspirations is President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. Yeah, President Hugo. As for the historical inspirations I drew on in writing The Snow Queen, I suppose I would call them more cross-cultural inspirations, though they frequently involve past societies as well as present-day ones. I love finding out-of-the-box inspirations and blending them with what I've done in the past. And when I started to experiment with genres, it didn't sound forced. Maybe that's because it's all music that I listened to growing up, and it's all music that I love. I go back and forth between input phases where I'm reading a lot or trying to get out and explore the world a bit and soak up inspirations, and then I'll get back into output mode and write and write and write. I'd usually read the Bible a lot, read little short Bible stories. And today, whenever I give speeches, I bring up a few of those Bible stories, because those are inspirations to me. My brother was a drummer, and he was always, like, smashing the kit around when I was a kid, and my dad was, like, one of them old musicians, and he played in, like, loads of different bands in the 70s and 80s. Him and my brother were kind of like my main inspirations. My biggest style inspirations come from the 90s. I'm really inspired by TLC, Janet Jackson, and designers like Jeremy Scott. I'm hugely inspired by club kids from New York back in the 90s. I'm inspired by the drag queen scene. Combat boots and the torn-off jeans and a baggy shirt, I love that look. My inspirations include the Beatles, love them, Elton John, Carole King, and Stevie Wonder. Witty inspirations are the proverbs of the educated. I really didn't try to make an effort to make urban music, but I am a product of my inspirations. Beyoncé is one of my inspirations. Her attitude, her style, her voice, she's perfect. One of my big inspirations was Chuck Berry, and his playing was always about the rhythm and the lyrics. So I've always been that way in my playing, really. I have enormous respect for Steve Johnson, and as I've told him, Feed was one of the inspirations for Salon. They were up there before we were. And also for Joey and the Suck People. Inspiration can hit you in the head at any time in any context. It could happen in a conversation. Talking to someone at a party, you can get an idea. But you've got to remember those inspirations. Why is it that English, drama and music teachers are most often recalled as our mentors and inspirations? Maybe because artists are rarely members of the popular crowd. One of my biggest inspirations growing up was Whitney Houston, so I was devastated to hear about her passing. I'm from East Orange, New Jersey, and started singing at New Hope Baptist Church, so she was like my fellow Jersey girl. Master Blaster, by Stevie Wonder, is up-tempo and fun, like Stevie himself. Stevie's always making jokes, he really knows how to put people at ease. He's one of my inspirations, as a musician and a person. My decision to start a new one is just that, a decision, since I never get inspirations. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.